in a current stage environment, it's really hard to get a position right after a PhD.
Welcome to the Free the PhD podcast, where we explore the ups and downs of scientific life and career transitions. I'm your host and founder, Vay Cao. Today we'll be chatting with Dr. Beau Wangtrakuldee about her transition from the bench to the boardroom. Beau is a senior associate in the biotechnology practice at Korn Ferry, a global organizational consulting firm. She's also a founder of her own startup, Sui, which we'll learn about in a later episode. Dr. Wangtrakuldee received her PhD in chemistry from Northern Illinois University and completed a postdoc at UPenn. Okay, so let's go into the path that you took, transitioning from your previous life as a scientist at the bench to the day job that you have today.
PhD program was a natural way a lot of students at my school was taking. I went to a small liberal arts school with a heavy focus in science. I think it's called Kalamazoo College in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And most of the people there, when they graduated with a bachelor degree, the natural path is to, go to grad school or go to advanced degree school. And at the time, it was a natural path for me. I was doing internship in a research lab for all the summers that I was in college, and I loved it. So for me, it was a natural path to go into a PhD program in chemistry and to continue, learning more and gaining more research experience.
And so what did you study?
Before I went into a PhD program, and I went to a school in DeKalb, Illinois, just 45 minutes outside Chicago, called Northern Illinois University. And when I went there, my goal is to build upon my organic synthesis research experience, which I had in college. So I ended up with a project that was a combination of organic chemistry and then also medicinal chemistry and also biochemistry. So I make small molecules that could be potential drugs. Then I design the assays and I purify protein and then, screen the drugs to see if it could become a potential treatment in the future.
Okay. So it does sound like a pretty typical research path that you had while you were doing the PhD. So one thing you did do that I think a lot of PhD holders are considering doing during their training is an internship. So you did an internship at a pharma company. Tell us how that came about.
The story is that I host a director of research and development at Abby for one of our school talks. So I invited him, I spoke with him, I built a relationship with him. And during a summer before I defense, I started thinking about what would I be doing next after graduation. And it seems to dawn on me that, I don't know anything about working in a pharmaceutical company. So I contact, my director person at Abby and then ask him for advice in terms of, how would I learn more about, experience in the industry and a job and career in the big pharmaceutical company. And, he invited me to, come and take a look at the lab and potentially intern for the summer. If someone interested in pursuing an internship like this, I guess reach out to your network or build your network. Don't be afraid to ask.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hard things for people to do when they feel like they don't have anything to offer. So it's a great suggestion to go out and build relationships organically through organizing events or just doing other things outside of the lab.
Yeah, I mean, you think about students who are in academic setting. You have at least, quarterly talks or monthly talks or weekly talks that going on in a different department, especially if you're in bigger school. Those are great networking opportunities. Make sure that after the talks end, go shake hands with speakers, get their contacts, keep in touch, especially if they're working somewhere where, you may be aspiring to work for. And that's exactly what I did. I volunteer myself to host a speaker. I make a good impression on a speaker and I keep in touch with him. And that's how I got an opportunities to land an internship at AbbVie, something that's not really typical for people who was a PhD student.
Yeah, for sure. So you did the internship, you learned a little bit about what it's like to be in pharma, and you decided to do a postdoc afterwards. So what was the strategy behind that particular decision?
So there's a lot of type of science and, fields that going on in the industry currently. But if you are in medicinal chemistry or, trying to go for pharmaceutical industry, in a current stage environment, it's really hard to get a position right after a PhD. And this is what my mentor and my boss during my internship at AbbVie told me, that, if we would have hired you to come in as a senior scientist, you would require to have a postdoctoral training in an Ivy League school.
Ivy League specifically?
Yeah, Ivy League school. That's exactly direct word they recommended to me.
Wow, okay.
And they even said, go to Penn, go to U Chicago, go to Northwestern, go to Harvard, and then let me know when 2 years in, and then we'll invite you back for an interview.
Wow, okay.
I'm being really transparent. That was an advice I was given. I started looking for it because that seems to be an expectation that the industry require for someone like me.
Yeah. Okay. And where did you end up? And, what did you do during that postdoc time?
So I actually ended up at Penn.
Works out.
Yeah, it did work out. It actually, panned out the way that, they recommended me to do so. And I was working in pharmacology department at Penn under Dr. Trevor Penning. And he's a director of the pharmacology programs there. So it was a good fit in a way that, I was trained in medicinal chemistry. I work in development of pharmaceuticals. And when I went to work for him, I focused more on the biochemistry side, less than the organic chemistry side. So it was, doing a deeper dive on something that I was interested in.
Yeah, for sure. So during the postdoc, you also, just like in your PhD, went for other opportunities to get more experience, which is awesome. So you have quite a few different types of consulting experiences. So can you share how you got those opportunities and sort of what you learned in those consulting opportunities?
My AbbVie experience was actually really crucial to the step that I was taking during my time at Penn that get me to where I am now. When I went to work for AbbVie, I realized that as a PhD chemist in research and discovery, I will be at the front of drug discovery. And that's exciting, except that when I look into a drug discovery pipeline, anything that going from the bench to the market take 20 years or more. Mm-hmm. And personally, to me, I was really passionate about making impact in patients' life based on my work. And, being in that position would not get me to do as much as I want to. So when I went to Penn, with that overlook and that perspective, I already knew that, I was not going to continue my research at the bench. I knew that I want to find a way where I can make a better impact on my career from my technical training. So after I was, able to get used to the regular day job at Penn, I started looking for ways that I could transition out of the bench. And that including, some of the things you mentioned. I volunteer to consult for a startup company coming out of Penn, for example. I work, and then gradually I make connections with different people that I work with a more established company, including BD. Mm-hmm. And then I make other connections along the way that also linked me to Penn Center of Innovation. So I did an internship at Technology Transfer as well. I always tell people that ask for my advice that if you're interested in something, don't be afraid to ask your network how could you get from one point to another point, and what are their connections that they could link you so you can explore more. And that's exactly what I did.
So you decided to try for consulting jobs when you were getting out of the postdoc. So how did you prepare? Because consulting is one of those very notoriously difficult interview processes.
You know, what I did best for myself is to learn about what consulting is like. I think, you know, it's really different from, you know, someone who coming from a PhD, in the sense that consulting require many factors, including working in teams, really dealing with clients, really used to problem solve in a way that you don't know anything about. And one of the biggest thing in consulting interview is a case interview prep, which there's a lot of resources out there. But if you're really serious about going into consulting, I would suggest that, you know, you prepare yourself for an interview that a little bit different from a typical one.
What was your success rate that you felt after all of your preparation for finding one of these jobs?
If I have to be frank, the success rate is really small. And I want to say that transparently, because I don't want to shoot anybody hopes down, but I want them to prepare. That's just the mindset that you have to do, is you keep going until you get a job. You're really serious at it. So, for example, I probably applied to about 60 positions, and I received about 35 first round interview. And from there, I actually got about 5 second round interview.
Okay.
And then I got 2 offers.
Yeah, which actually sounds amazing already, but that's a lot of work.
Yeah, and that is not exaggerate. I have a lot of friends who I talked to who went through the same process as me. Some even, you know, I think their resume is super duper impressive. and you know, they still suffer the same thing that I went through. And sometimes it's not because of you. It's depend on, you know, the type of culture they were looking for. You were saying one thing wrong. They were not particularly looking to hire anyone. They were just sampling the candidate in the market. If someone who really serious about getting consulting, listen to this. If you really, really want to do consulting, just keep going. And it will happen. I don't know when, I don't know how, but just keep going. And the best way to prepare yourself is to learn about the company as much as you can. The culture, the way that they recruit, the type of case interview that they will do. Try to do informal interview with people who already work there as much as you can, and network with them before, you know, even dab your foot into it.
Yeah. What aspects would you say, like maybe the top difference between sitting in a consulting case interview versus, say, sitting in your thesis defense, or, you know, getting grilled by your PI in a lab meeting? What's one of the main differences?
Well, the first thing is that you going in a case interview don't know anybody there. You've been judging from a stranger that you know nothing about, and they're already looking for something that you are going to do wrong. I mean, you know, the same as the defense, but at least, you know, if you have a good mentor, they should already be supportive of you. And the second of all, you know, in the case interview, you may approach a problem that you know nothing about.
Yeah.
Again, there might be a case about a taxi driver, a company that is selling candy or something, and had nothing to do with anything that you know. And you just have to be able to go in, figure out a solution, and impress the people that you're sitting with.
Yeah, lots of preparing for the unknown.
In a consulting world, you deal with clients all the time, and sometimes clients get mad. And, you know, when you bring into a project, you're supposed to be an expert. That's why they pay you a lot of money for. So it's only natural that they're looking for someone who will be flexible and really poised in addressing an issue just right at the snap.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so basically you have these offers, and then it sounds like there was this unexpected twist that came out of the blue. What happened next?
Yeah, so at the time when I already have two offers on the table, it was a consulting offer for a boutique company in Princeton. And I was set that, that's what I was going to be doing next. Except, I think it's only a day after I received an offer, I got a call from a recruiter from Korn Ferry.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know, Korn Ferry is one of the biggest recruiting firm, executive recruiting firm, and also leadership consulting in the world. It's actually ranked number 1 in Forbes this year.
Wow.
So I guess kudos to me to pick the right organization to join. And I never think that I will be at Korn Ferry. I never look at them. I never consider them. But when I look closer into it, where I am now, I sit as senior associate in a biotech practice. This practice, I think, is unique in a way that we only work with venture-backed biotech companies. And my team work with premier venture funds. Some of the funds that I could name, Third Rock, for example, Polaris, OrbiMed, the top tier VC fund.
Yeah.
And we help their portfolio companies to find the right leadership to take the company to the next step. And that's exactly the impact factors that I was looking for, as I mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that the work is done is a consultative approach. So even though I'm a senior associate, I often have a direct conversation with clients and help them to solve a solution from a talent and also leadership perspective. And a lot of that kind of go back to things that I loved to do is to use my technical expertise to help make a bigger impact into patients. And that's exactly what I do. A lot of these companies that I work with, they focus in rare disease, and really important to bring the technologies into the life of the patients.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. You're basically going, instead of like bottom up, starting from R&D, you're kind of going top down from the executive level.
I got the same stress all the consultant will get. I got angry clients and I got happy clients. Similar thing as I would expect if I was working at BCG or McKinsey.
How are your hours?
It depends. I have days where I work 14 hours straight, and I have days that I can work 5 hours, and there's the days where I can take a day off and work from home. Okay. I think it's really depend on what my schedule is and my workload is. And that's kind of nature of consulting too. You have to be flexible with whatever comes next. If the clients want things done now, you get it done now.
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of going through that entire process of looking for jobs, getting out of academia, and finding a role that it sounds like you're pretty happy with, making an impact that you really enjoy, what would you tell PhDs and postdocs that are preparing for interviews?
I think, I learned a hard way that the best way to figure it out better what you want to do with your life in general is to have conversation. And to build a network around you and reach out to them and have a conversation and get their mentorship, especially if you're an early career scientist. That has been the way that I learned along the way to come to where I am now. Even when I was negotiating for salary, I reached out to one of my colleagues who's older to help me with that. Mm-hmm. So I think, keep building on your network. Like I said, from academia, from pharmaceutical, I think the best way to build your network is to make sure you have a little bit of everyone, especially if you're unsure.
Yeah, definitely. And so sometimes, I've had conversations with PhDs or postdocs who just feel like they're not allowed to step outside the lab and do something else, or, their boss or their mentor wouldn't approve, or they just don't think it's important, that it's more important to try and get the next paper or the next grant. What do you think of that attitude?
To be frankly, when I started a postdoc at Penn, And 6 months in, when I started exploring different opportunities, of course, my mentor was not happy with it. But the way that I would successfully be able to manage that is I manage expectation with my mentor. I was really on top of things and really, really good with building trust with my PI. I sent him an update every week. I always on time when meeting with him. I always send him email when I have questions. So when I'm doing that, I'm establishing trust with him that I'm working on the things that are important to him. For that reason, I was able to convince him that I can do things outside the lab too if I'm still able to manage his expectation. I think it's really important if you're considering doing other things that you be able to already control and execute what you already have on hand and manage expectation and trust with the PI before taking on additional things.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. I think time management and in general things that we hear like project management is not something that we're necessarily trained in the bench life. So yeah, being able to take the initiative and do it yourself is a good way to show that you can do more.
And I want to go back to communications.
Yeah.
And I learned this the hard way also. When I was a scientist and I was a PhD student, I always kept to myself. When I have a problem, I don't tell anyone. When I'm worried about something, I kept to myself and I think that I can solve it myself. I thought that if I don't tell anybody, nobody thinks that, I am weak or I don't understand something or I can't get things right. It's actually the opposite, especially now that I'm working with people all the time. The more you communicate, the more you ask the right questions, that you ask the important questions, people engage with you and they're really willing to give feedback. And that's really, really important for, someone as an early career scientist to grow. With my PI also, the more I keep communicating with him what I'm doing, what I'm doing wrong, what I'm doing right, the more you build trust with people around you. And so I'm really encourage people to speak up, to talk and communicate more about things that are going on with their life so they could improve upon things that they could accomplish.
That wraps up this segment of my conversation with Dr. Wangtrakuldee about her PhD transition into a management consulting company. Join us next time when we chat about what it's like on the job, recruiting and interacting with executives. I'm your host, Vay Cao, founder of Free the PhD. Connect with Free the PhD on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, and let us know if you have a PhD story to share. Thanks for listening.